What if I told you one man made millions of dollars without selling anything, without building anything, and without even having a real business? People trusted him, investors admired him, and thousands literally begged him to take their money. Imagine standing in a crowded street, watching people hand over their life savings, believing they were about to change their lives forever. But behind the scenes, it was all a lie. This is the story of Charles Ponzi, the man who turned deception into an empire and created one of the most infamous financial scams in history. Charles Ponzi was born in Italy in 1882, into a family that once had wealth, status, and respect. His ancestors had been successful businessmen and officials, people who lived comfortably and were admired in society. But by the time Ponzi grew up, that legacy had faded. The money was gone, and the family had fallen into a more modest life. For most people, this would simply be reality. But for Ponzi, it became a deep frustration. He didn't just want money, he believed he was meant to have it. He felt like life had cheated him, like he had been born into the wrong version of his own story. As a teenager, Ponzi received a small inheritance after his father passed. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to build something meaningful. His family hoped he would use it for education, for a stable future, for a respectable life. But Ponzi had other plans. Instead of focusing on studies, he spent the money chasing a lifestyle he couldn't afford. Expensive clothes, fine dining, nights at the theater, gambling with wealthy friends. He immersed himself in the illusion of being rich. For a while, it worked. He blended in. He felt important. But the truth was simple. The money wasn't endless. And when it ran out, so did the illusion. With no degree, no skills, and no money left, Ponzi faced a harsh reality. He had nowhere to go. So in 1903, he made a bold decision. He left Italy and traveled to the United States, chasing what so many others chased, the American dream. He believed that somehow, somewhere, he would find a way to become rich. But America was not what he imagined. There were no shortcuts waiting for him, no easy opportunities. Instead, there was hard work, long hours, and constant struggle. Ponzi worked as a waiter, a dishwasher, a factory worker, a clerk, anything he could find just to survive. But he hated every job, not because they were difficult, but because he believed he was above them. In his mind, he wasn't meant to live like this. He wasn't meant to struggle. He was meant to succeed, to be wealthy, to live a life of luxury. But belief alone doesn't create success, and Ponzi lacked the patience and discipline to build something real. After years of failure, Ponzi moved to Canada, hoping for a fresh start. There, he found a job at a bank that served immigrant communities. At first, it seemed like stability, but soon he noticed something unusual. The bank was offering unusually high returns to its customers, far higher than other banks. And the reason was simple, but dangerous. The bank was using money from new customers to pay the older ones. It created the illusion of a profitable business, but in reality, it was unsustainable. It was a system built on shifting money, not creating it. For most people, this would be a warning, a clear sign of fraud. But for Ponzi, it was something else entirely. It was inspiration. He saw how easily people could be convinced, how trust could be manipulated, how money could flow without real value behind it. Once the bank eventually collapsed, Ponzi didn't walk away with a lesson about honesty. He walked away with an idea. In 1919, back in the United States, Ponzi came across something called international reply coupons. These were small vouchers used for international mail, allowing the sender to prepay the reply postage. At first glance, they seemed insignificant, but Ponzi saw potential. He realized that due to differences in currency values between countries, these coupons could theoretically be bought cheaply in one place and exchanged for more valuable postage in another. It was a concept known as arbitrage. On paper, it looked like a smart and legitimate business idea, Buy low, sell high, repeat the process, and scale it up. But there was a major problem. The profit margins were incredibly small, and the costs involved in transporting and exchanging the coupons made it impossible to turn it into a large-scale operation. In reality, it couldn't generate the kind of returns Ponzi dreamed of. But Ponzi didn't let that stop him, because by now he understood something far more powerful than business itself. He understood people. He understood that if something sounded convincing enough, if it promised quick and easy money, people wouldn't question it too deeply. So instead of making the idea work in reality, he made it work in perception. He launched a company and began offering an unbelievable deal. Investors could earn 50% profit in just 45 days, or 100% in 90 days. No risk, guaranteed returns. It sounded impossible, and in reality, it was. But to many people, it sounded like an opportunity they couldn't afford to miss. At first, only a few people invested. Then those early investors received their returns, not from real profits, but from the money of new investors. They were thrilled. They told their friends, their families, their neighbors, and suddenly the system began to grow. More people invested, then even more. Soon, crowds were gathering outside Ponzi's office, desperate to hand over their money. The system was simple. New money paid old investors, creating the illusion of success. And as long as new people kept joining, the system kept running. It didn't require a real business, just a constant flow of belief. At his peak, Ponzi was making hundreds of thousands of dollars every day. He became a celebrity in his own right. Newspapers praised him, people admired him, and he finally lived the life he had always dreamed of. He bought a luxurious mansion, drove expensive cars, wore elegant suits, and surrounded himself with wealth. To the outside world, he was proof that anyone could achieve success. But behind the scenes, the entire system was fragile. It depended entirely on trust, and trust can break faster than anything else. As time passed, some people began to question his operation. Journalists started investigating. Financial experts looked at the numbers and realized something didn't add up. The scale of the operation didn't match the reality of the coupon market. In fact, it was mathematically impossible. There simply weren't enough international reply coupons in existence to support what Ponzi claimed he was doing. And once these doubts reached the public, everything began to unravel. Investors grew nervous. They rushed to withdraw their money. But the problem with a system like Ponzi's is that it only works when money is coming in, not going out. And when too many people wanted their money back at the same time, the illusion collapsed. The lines outside his office didn't disappear, but the reason changed. Instead of people trying to invest, they were trying to get their money back. Panic spread quickly. The same trust that built the empire now destroyed it. Within a short time, the entire operation fell apart. Thousands of people lost their savings. Some lost everything they had. Banks that were connected to Ponzi's operations faced serious trouble. The damage wasn't just financial, it was emotional. People felt betrayed, embarrassed, and devastated. And at the center of it all was the man who had promised them easy wealth. Ponzi was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud. The man who once stood at the top of a financial empire was now facing the consequences of his deception. He was sentenced to prison, and his empire disappeared as quickly as it appeared. But even after his release, Ponzi didn't change. He attempted new schemes, new ways to regain the wealth he had lost. But by then, his reputation was damaged beyond repair. People no longer saw him as a genius, they saw him as a fraud. And in the end, the life he always dreamed of slipped away completely. He spent his final years in poverty, far from the luxury he once enjoyed. The man who once had millions died with almost nothing. And yet his story didn't end with him, because the system he created, The idea of taking from new investors to pay old investors continues to exist even today. It appears in different forms, under different names, but the core idea remains the same. The promise of easy money, the illusion of guaranteed returns, the belief that something too good to be true might actually be real. So the next time you hear about an opportunity that sounds perfect, something that promises fast profits with no risk, take a moment to think, because behind that promise, there might be nothing at all. Just like Ponzi's empire, built not on real value, but on belief. And when belief disappears, everything else disappears with it.